pastor of the Enoch Baptist Church to come forward and bring us our invocation.
He did not check in, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry?
He did not check in with
He did
the
not?
ladies.
I don't see it.
No.
All right, if you'll all stand, please.
Get Reverend Jones.
And after the invocation, if you'll all join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. Let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we know that you are always near us and beside us in all that we do. We thank you for being with us this evening and guiding us and directing us in the decisions that we make. And when we leave this place, we ask that you give us your love and guidance throughout the following days. We pray in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We did not have a closed session, so we will not do certification. You have the roll call, Madam Clerk.
Yes, Your Honor, all present except the mayor.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the informal and formal session of December the 12th, 2017.
So moved. Second.
Motion's made. Vote is open.
By a vote of 9-0, the board is not working again. With Mrs. Abbott abstaining, you've approved the minutes of December 12th.
Would you like to comment, Ms. Abbott?
I wasn't present in December 12th.
Vice Mayor, Pastor Daniels is present now.
They entertain a motion to approve the special formal sessions minutes of December 12th, 15th, and 19th, 2017.
So moved. Second.
Vote is open.
By a vote of 9-0 again with it is working now, Mr. Moss abstaining.
Correct.
You've
I was
approved
not
those minutes.
either of those sessions.
Mr.
I was in
City Attorney,
travel.
do I need to abstain on this vote since I was not present on the 12th?
You may abstain, or you may vote, and as to the others, and announce the one you were not present at.
I was present for the rest. I just
Okay.
wasn't present for the 12th.
All right. I'd like to, I'm going to read, I need an add-on, a motion to add on to the agenda an ordinance confirming the declaration
Thank you.
of a local emergency due to Winter Storm Grayson.
So moved.
Have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Any discussion? If not, the vote is open.
Folks did a great job.
By a vote of 10-0, you have approved the motion to add on to the agenda.
Members of council, I will read the consent agenda, and after I read the consent agenda, I'll entertain a motion on it. First on the consent agenda for approval is ordinance item 8. Ordinances and resolutions. Item 8.1 is ordinances to amend the city code A, section 21-303, rate parking in cul-de-sacs. B, section 38-3, rate discharge of firearms. Item H2, which is an ordinance to repeal the city code section 23-15, rate begging on streets or beaches. Item H4, which is resolutions to appoint A, Amanda Barnes to the position of city clerk, and B, Ronald D. Agnor to the position of city real estate assessor. Item 5 is ordinance to transfer $208,375 from the fire department's operating budget, raise staffing for adequate fire and emergency response grant. And item 6, which is the add-on, an ordinance confirming the declaration of a local emergency due to Winter Storm Grayson. I now declare a hearing on planning, and under planning, for consent, is an ordinance to amend section 111 and 218 of the city ordinance, city zoning ordinance, rate definition of major retail venue. And Madam Clerk, please note that Mr. Moss is voting no on that item.
Yes, sir.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Mr.
Just have a
Moss?
friendly amendment. I registered a no vote on item 4B, and I don't recall hearing that being stated.
Would you note Mr. Moss's no on 4B, please?
Yes, sir.
Do you also have my, I didn't hear you, I'm sorry, Mr. Vice Mayor, on item 4B, I'm abstaining? Okay,
Yes.
I just
Yes,
didn't.
ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. Make a note of that.
Yes.
All right. Any further discussion? Vote is open.
By a vote of 10 to 0, you have approved the consent agenda, noting Mr. Moss's nay votes and Abbott's abstention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now go to,
Mr. Vice Mayor, if I could, I asked if I could have the privilege of explaining my no vote so people would understand, the public. With regards to the city real estate assessor position, without getting into the details, which are privileged personnel questions, I did express to the city council that I thought we should have expanded and sought out a larger group of more highly qualified competitive candidates. But that notwithstanding, I have consistently voted no against what I find to be excessive compensation, and I find a salary of $145,000 plus a $6,000 contribution to deferred compensation for a total of $151,000 to be in excess of what is required to have people who are dedicated to public service to serve in a city accountable position. So I voted no. With regards to the major retail venue item, I voted no on two bases. One, the Planning Commission, if you look at the verbatim, they also asked to defer the item because there seemed to be a paucity of information as to what the problem we were trying to solve, what were we trying to accomplish by the definition change. And I, obviously, because of the storm, as you can imagine, the questions that I posed trying to ascertain as to why we were solving it, since we had no prior education on the issue, wasn't available. And by my very nature, if I don't understand something, I prefer to default to the status quo, so I'm voting no.
all right, Ms. Abbott, did you have?
Yeah, I just wanted to share that the reason I was abstaining from that, from the city assessors, or city real estate assessors vote is simply my father had emergency service on the day that we were, emergency surgery on the day that we were conducting interviews, and I felt that since I was unable to be present, I should not be casting a vote.
Thank you. All right, now we will go to the ordinance that was not voted on under the consent agenda, and that's item H3, a resolution to allow additional time for consideration by the Planning Commission for the proposed alternative amendments to CZO Ray home sharing and short-term rentals. Madam Clerk, you have speakers.
Yes, Your Honor. The first speaker is Dylan Lloyd, and the second speaker will be Michael Davis.
May I inform all of the speakers that the time limit is 3 minutes for all of the speakers, unless you represent a civic league, in which it would be 10 minutes.
Dylan Lloyd. Michael Davis. And then Frank Driscoll will be the next speaker.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here on behalf of the Civic League of Sandbridge, and with regard to the continuing this out until the Planning Commission has had an opportunity to finish its work, we're requesting that you do just that. This is a matter of major concern to our to the Civic League and to the residents of Sandbridge. We see no reason or urgency for this to be considered tonight without the Planning Commission's full consideration of the matter. I was present at the Planning Commission meeting. At that meeting, the Planning Commission was very concerned with the resistance to the current proposals that are on the table, and wanted to study this matter further, and I think it's justified for you to consider postponing this until they have an opportunity to report back to you what they find. I don't see any urgency in a vote being necessary now. This is an ongoing situation for 50 years. I don't see what another month will matter. It also gives time for the residents, excuse me, for the residents of Sandbridge in particular, and for Virginia Beach in general, to have a presence here and to represent their concerns to you if there are any, and I'm asking you to consider postponing this vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Frank Driscoll.
Good evening, City Council, City Attorney. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just want to pretty much repeat the same thing. We had a meeting before the Planning Commission. We had a full house. It was pretty apparent that the City Planning Commission believes that they need more time to consider the issues, and I'm also in favor that we delay and let the Planning Commission a little bit more time to consider the issues. Just two issues. I just believe that, the stated purpose of these ordinances is for the public health and safety. And I look over all the ordinances that they're looking at passing, and I just think it's going to have such an adverse effect on the well-being of our city and the tourism. One of the two issues I just want to bring and bring to light is just a couple of the issues. One issue is limiting the number of people that you can have in a room. What are we going to do? Are we going to have people going into each of these rentals and determining how many rentals we have? And you have to look at, when you have families coming from up north and you have, you put 4 or 5 cousins from different families together and they enjoy their time together, they bond. And, you have these people coming from other states and really enjoying the city of Virginia Beach, and we're going to stop that. And these are the same people that they'll remember the time that they came to Sandbridge, which has always been a short-term rental community. And this will go on, and they'll continue to come back and visit our city and spend money in our restaurants. The other thing that, really worries me is the fact that, all these, what I call these regulations that really don't, address the issues that, the problems that people are saying as far as the public health and safety. These people, you're going to limit how many people can come to a house, and at 10 o'clock, if you have more people than what you're allowed to have at the house, that they have to leave. For example, there's a limit of 2 people per room plus 4. So we have my family has 2 beach houses down at Sandbridge, and let's say we have a 4-bedroom house that's 8 people plus 4 is 12. Let's say you have people come down from Pittsburgh and other cities, and they have 4 or 5, if I could have one more minute, they have 4 or 5 families that come down, and they rent one house with about 12 people in it, and then they rent a house next door with another 12 people in it, and one happens to have a pool, and you have 6 people inside the house and 12 people outside around the pool enjoying their time together. Are we going to tell them that, hey, I'm sorry, you got to leave. The family can't come down and enjoy Sandbridge? Well, I'm going to tell you what. I would imagine that the Chamber of Commerce, for the Outer Banks or even Myrtle Beach are going to love these ordinances. Because when people are considering staying in Sandbridge or, Sandbridge, they're going to look at these egregious ordinances and they're going to say, you know what, let's go somewhere else. Let's not go to Sandbridge, or let's not go to other parts. So I think, I think that we need more time to consider these ordinances and what kind of effect they will have on our city and our tourism dollar. And I think the Planning Commission was pretty clear on that. I don't think, I think the City Council should do what they usually do, is take, let the Planning Commission do their job, and then consider these ordinances. Thank you very much.
Your time's up.
Charlie Kelly.
Vice Mayor, members of the City Council, I'd just like to support the Planning Commission's position, which is to give them the time that they need to study this and give you their best work. The other thing I'd just like to say, there's been a lot of discussion about things that are serious in these proposed ordinances. The one thing that has gotten very little discussion has been what I'll call the 3 strikes and you're out. I own a property in Sandbridge. I've owned it since 2001. If I post the rules and regulations that my tenant should adhere to, and one of them sets off fireworks, and it's been adjudicated that that was a violation related to my house. The next one has a dog that's barking, and it's adjudicated it's a violation against my house. And the next person doesn't put all their garbage in the trash can, they put it to the side, and it's adjudicated it's against my house. Currently, I can't rent my house anymore. I know a lot of people who, faced with that, they can't pay their mortgage anymore. They're going to be bankrupt, go into bankruptcy, and we're going to have a devastating impact. So I agree with the council people who said this was a serious thing that required a lot of thought, because it could have some very detrimental consequences if we're not careful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That's all the speakers.
That's all the speakers?
Yes, sir.
All right. If, may I have a motion?
Move to approve for the deferral.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded to defer to approve the deferrals. Any discussion? If not, the vote's open.
By a vote of 10-0, you have approved the ordinance to approve the deferral.
Thank you. Mrs. Henley, I believe you had some comments.
Right. Of course, I had some questions to pose during the briefing that we had, but we did go quite long on another very important topic, and so there wasn't really time to ask the questions. And so I asked if we could have a little bit of discussion time here. Of course, it's not related to whether or not we were going to allow the Planning Commission more time, but the issue itself. As I mentioned, this has been an issue that we have had before us for 2.5 years, so there's certainly no rush. But it's a very important issue, and I think it's been oversimplified to appear to be just one community's issue. But we find out that there's something that's being done throughout the city. It's evolved into something that's very prevalent, and our zoning ordinance doesn't recognize it. So it's not allowed. You look at the map that we have given to us that show the locations of short-term rentals, and you can see just how this has exploded over the last few years. But in trying to deal with this, since we don't have it in our zoning ordinance anyway, we don't have a short-term rental thing in our zoning ordinance. So we have to create a new thing, I call it a new animal, to recognize this. And first we were going to call it a home occupation short-term rental, but then we realized, well, short-term rentals definitions, I guess, wouldn't allow it to be in that category. So now we're classifying it or calling it an accessory use. And I've been sending emails to the staff saying, I don't understand how it can be an accessory use, because all of our definitions for accessory uses say that they have to be, or that they're uses that are clearly incidental and subordinate to principal uses. And then we have other things in other parts of the zoning categories that deal with accessory uses. For example, in the ag category, it says that the activity is specifically designed or conducted to permit no more than one patron, customer, or pupil to be present on the premises at any one time, and the activity is conducted on the premises, which is the bona fide residence of the principal practitioner. None of these fit the short-term rental that we are talking about. And then in our residential districts, for example, it says that accessory uses in structures in residential zoning districts except for R30 and 40 cannot exceed 500 square feet of floor area or 20% of the floor area of the principal structure, whichever is greater. In the R30 and R40 residential zoning district, accessory uses and structures shall not exceed 30% of the floor area of the principal structure. But as I read this thing, the short-term rental is 100% of the principal structure or the dwelling unit, which is what I guess we would call it in the case of an apartment. So it's not an accessory use. We're really going to have to come up with something else. And I did pose this question, and I just got some thoughts on it from the staff just before I came to the meeting, and I haven't really had a chance to digest it, but I think they were saying is, well, we're going to have to look at these things, and I think that's true. So I don't think we can call it an accessory use, but my question is related to the fact that we're going to be making it a principal use in all of the zoning categories, all of the Rs, the agricultural, even the B4s and the apartment zoning categories. It's going to be a principal use. Now, if we adopt alternative 3, which is being highly recommended by some, we would be making these short-term rentals a principal use. They can just do it. There has no review, no neighborhood comment, just do it in any of these residential categories. And all they have to do is follow those conditions, and some of those we're being asked to make even more liberal than what was suggested in the ordinance, the proposals. And so making these things principal uses really scares me to death. And so my question is, and you can think about this, you don't have to answer this tonight, if we do this and we allow short-term rentals to be principal uses in residential neighborhoods all over our city, and then we realize it was a mistake, can we undo it? Or has this use become a vested right with those properties, and it would be a situation of a taking if we tried to take it back? I'm really afraid of principal uses for short-term rentals. I think it's a very drastic step to take to address this problem. Also, if we make short-term rentals a principal use, what's going to regulate their size? After all, they're residential units. And the building permits that these are being submitted for say they're going to be residential. Well, I'm thinking particularly in the agricultural zoning, where the lot sizes tend to be pretty large. Normally, maybe things like lot coverage and setbacks would somewhat govern the size of the unit that could be built there. But if you've got a large lot, you don't have those restrictions. So just how big can a single-family residence get? What is the maximum number of bedrooms that a single-family residence can have? You know, what is going to regulate the size, or will there be any regulation of the size? Well, right now, if a building permit simply designates the structure to be a residential unit, certain building codes that are required or what's enforced. But what if the building permit was a request for a bed and breakfast, something for transient occupancy? So what I have asked staff is, would there be different building code requirements? And the answer is, well, yes. Above a certain number of bedrooms, there are certain fire codes that apply. So we are not being able to provide for safety if it's just a residential unit when we get to these very large structures. So we call these a transient occupancy facility because we are collecting a transient occupancy tax, but we are allowing them to follow the codes for just single-family residences and not what they are, which is transient occupancy. I know that in the recommendations from the ad hoc committee to us, which were submitted in November of 2016, one of their recommendations, and we adopted this when we adopted the resolution that went to the General Assembly asking for the authority to regulate, that we believe the General Assembly should grant authority to localities to promulgate health and safety requirements to address parity with other transient occupancy providers and to ensure that rental dwellings are reasonably safe. We adopted that in November of 2016 in our resolution to the General Assembly. So that's a question, you know, is there any way to assure some of these safety things that are being left out by the way we're doing it now? That's, you know, if we adopt alternative 3. Alternative 1, if we adopt alternative 1, which is the use of overlay districts, how would we create the overlay districts and I got some thoughts back on that. Would the property owners petition to create the district? I seem to remember some overlay districts we did maybe in the Chatillon area and down at the beach a few years ago that did come out of the neighborhoods of request, but I think the answer I keep getting is, well, it would be up to the city council to decide how we would decide where the overlay district boundaries are and how it would be created. Or my question is, would it be like our SSD districts that require a certain percentage of property owners to sign the petition before a district is created? And it seems to me that, creating these overlay districts could get to be a bit problematic. But then I hear from other people that, well, we can't require conditional use permits because they are so time-consuming and so costly. But our zoning ordinance seems to be built on the use of conditional use permits. We do them every time we have a voting session. If it's not a principal use, in instances where things seem to not quite fit a principal use, it can be allowed with certain conditions, which make it a conditional use unless it's a prohibited use. Well, we have a conditional use permit for a family daycare facility on our agenda next week. We do it all the time. What makes them too onerous for allowing this commercial use in neighborhoods that we are prided ourselves as having stable neighborhoods, that it's too onerous to require conditional use permits for short-term rentals, but we do it all the time for childcare, or even if you're going to rehabilitate baby squirrels, you have to get a conditional use permit. That's an inside joke. Well, as I said, I wake up nights worrying about all of these things because I think what we do and how we address this short-term rental thing can lead to a lot of things that maybe we are not anticipating, a lot of unintended consequences. And I think we have given just too much attention to one community so that there are too many places in the city that think, well, it doesn't apply to us. But it does, and we need to look at this map, and we need to have plenty of opportunity for all of the communities to recognize, what making these a principal use would do, or what making even allowing them will do. I know the ad hoc committee said, we've come to the conclusion that the toothpaste is out of the tube, and we're going to have them. So, I think a lot of the neighborhoods that have been discussing this have come to understand that, well, it's not we're going to not have them, but how are we going to be able to have them and still have livable neighborhoods and have people have confidence that their neighborhoods are going to be able to be stable. Well, as I said in the very brief comments I made at the workshop, I really think we have to make certain that this is a totally transparent process. We have to make sure that we explain the ramifications of everything that we might be talking about doing. And I strongly suggest that all of us submit our questions now to the staff so they can be formulating the answers and that we can all understand these answers, or if there are going to have to be other steps taken, what those steps are going to be. I think the planning commissioners should submit their questions now. Don't wait until it's before you and you're at the dais and you've got to have these questions. They need to be submitted now. We need to have questions from all of the neighbors now so we can look at all of these things and we can fully understand what we're doing, and we're addressing this. And as Mr. Moss said, this is being addressed by cities all over the country, all over the world actually, because this is a phenomenon that has developed, and it's being addressed in different ways. And it's our turn now. I know that all of this kind of came when we weren't realizing what was happening. It grew. I mean, we knew we had vacation rentals for many years, but they were weekly vacation rentals, and then in the wintertime somebody else would rent the house all winter, and then they would have to vacate by Memorial Day because it was time for the vacation rentals, and that's been going on, I guess, since the beginning of North Virginia Beach. But that's where the school teachers used to always live, was in North Virginia Beach in the winter because of these rental houses. But then it became something else, as John was talking about. It became an all-year-round short-term rental investment. And now, we at first said, well, we've got to have something less than 7 days, but now we're saying, well, we need to have at least 2 each week less than 7 days. I don't know, it can just keep going, but it has kept going. And it's becoming a phenomenon that we need to address, we really have to address. It's happening, our ordinance doesn't allow it. We've said that from the very beginning when we recognized this. And so we really need to put it all out there for good discussion, get all the questions out, and really try to resolve this. I really appreciate the fact that there have been a lot of meetings among people in the neighborhoods that are affected, trying to come together to some state of compromise, because, we're going to have to figure out what that state is that everybody can live with and have their own property rights respected, whether it's someone who purchased their residence based on our zoning ordinance and our plans, and they made this big investment in their residence, and then, they suddenly find out that there's something else right next to them that they didn't count on. We've really got to work on resolving this, and I think we've got our work cut out for us over these next 2 months. This next month, now the Plan Commission can have some more input, but then it's going to come to us. And, this is where the action is. This is where we have to resolve it. And, I think a lot of things have happened, and I really worry about something happening, something tragic happening. We've already had one tragedy. But, if another one happens, are we responsible because we didn't address it? And I think of that standard, what did you know and when did you know it? Well, maybe we didn't know it was happening at first, but now we know it. And I think it's our responsibility to come to a way that we can address this, and we can't afford to get it wrong, because I go back to my first question. If we do something, can we undo it? Or have we made something vested? So I think we've got to be very, very careful. And I hope we can get all the questions out here now so that we can all discuss them and we can fully understand what's going on. And I appreciate the time to make those comments.
Any other council members have any comments? I noticed that we have some Boy Scouts in the audience. Wonder if I could get the Boy Scouts to come up front, if you would, please.
They're working on their citizenship, the community, communication.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome to the City Council. Would you start by the young fellow in the middle there, identifying yourselves for us and which troop you are from?
My name is Charlie Gallion, and I'm from Troop 419.
All right.
I'm Ryan Autumn from Troop 481.
All right.
I'm Connor Simon from Troop 12. I'm Logan Virgili from Troop 12.
Well, welcome to Virginia Beach City Council. We're proud that you're here, and thank you so much for coming. I have some badges for you, or city emblems for you, if you'll step up here, and you can wear them on your uniforms, okay?
While you're doing that, Mr. Vice Mayor, they're here tonight working on their citizenship in the community and and communication merit badges.
Oh, well, good. Congratulations. All right, is there any other business to come before the formal session of council?
Vice Mayor, there looks to be a Girl Scout here.
I'm sorry?
There looks to be a Girl Scout
Oh,
here as well.
I can't hear you.
There looks to be a Girl Scout here as well.
Oh, is there a Girl Scout? Please come forward.
Oh,
Would you identify yourself?
Hi, my name is Effie Gallion, and I'm from Troop 126.
Well, welcome. Thank you for coming tonight. Would you come forward?
Do you have your cookie order forms with you?
The meeting was canceled due to the weather.
Great. Well, we're very happy to have all of you here this evening.
Good sighting, Shannon.
If there's nothing else to come before the formal session of council, I will declare the meeting adjourned, and if we turn off the cameras, we will have what we call